That is a good question. Who knows if this will be the only interview I ever do, you know? It is the last one, those 40 seconds or so from the start of Orson Welles' film F for Fake. I just want to make sure that introduction got seen. Um, it kind of, in a way, summarizes this project that you know, the reason you're interviewing me, if you want to call this an interview, so that people understand my perspective on the truth and fiction and storytelling and lies. Um, I once had a professor. I went to school for film, but like the hands off, you know, the history, theory, criticism, basically a literature degree, but for reading films. And I had a professor in a documentary class one time showed us a movie by Eric Romer, I believe is the director's name. Obviously, if you're a film fan, like he's a big, important director from the 60s or 70s, I believe. I believe French New Wave, but I could be wrong. Um, but he was not a documentarian, to my knowledge. He was a filmmaker, a director, a fiction filmmaker, and he showed us this film that was, um, he had like I believe like a season, you know, spring, summer, winter season series of some sort. I can't remember the film offhand. Um, you know, it was a completely fiction actors acting film in a documentary class that he was trying to just prove some point about something. He was a very eccentric old, you know, philosophical, psychological mind type guy as far as movies went. And he showed us this Romer film about basically some family going to stay at a beach house, and it has, you know, um, it's kind of like a coming of age. Nothing really happens. Sort of cinema veritas, or however that phrase goes. You turn on the camera and you just let life happen. And I guess that was his point, is that even in a fiction film, you have, you know, the camera is going to capture what the camera captures, you know, like it's documenting life. And this is sort of the opposite, I guess. So that 40 seconds is basically just to let you know that, um, you know, everything that you may know about me through this YouTube series that, you know, you stumbled across is not a lie, certainly not a lie, but not necessarily the truth. Um, and I guess mostly if I could force, you know, everybody on Earth to watch one movie, that might be it. Either that or Sunless by Chris Marker. Sans Soleil, or whatever the French uh, name is. Without sun, I believe, is what it would translate to. Why am I only allowing interviews that are 3 questions or a max of 3 questions? Well, I know it's ironic because the reason anybody is paying attention to this is because I somehow managed to talk for, you know, however long it ended up being, 2 hours worth of YouTube videos about dealing with mental illness. Um, but yeah, so only 3 questions because I just don't think that anybody has anything to say. It seems to me the older I get, the more I realize that, like, oh, what's the meaning of life? Or, oh, like, what are we here for? And, like, what are we doing? And people, there's no answer to that. People are just, you know, floating through their 75 years and um, pretty much just talking because they feel like they have to, like you have to meet somebody to eventually fall in love, or you have to have friends so that you're not doing what I've done for the last 20 years of, isolation, and so they fill in the time with talking to each other. Um, and I've just never felt like I had anything to say, like, or anybody else has anything to say for that matter. So I just didn't want these to get too ridiculous and, you know, singularly focused on these thoughts in my head. And I figured 3 is kind of it's like the first significant number, it seems like. Um, so you get, I mean, yes, I know I kind of put you in a bad spot because you had to ask basically about the stipulation of the 40 seconds of F for fake. You basically had to ask about the um, 3 question limit, and there's 2 of your questions, and I pretty much know what the third question's gonna be. And yeah, I'm sorry for you being first, and having to deal with that. Anybody that watches this is gonna get the point, get the picture, I think. Anybody that has watched the YouTube series will already understand the picture, I think. So yeah, that's why you only get 3 questions, because there's really just nothing to say, like, there's too many people and there's too much going on with Earth, and it's silly that we have all of the issues that we have, and if everybody would just sort of not talk so much, maybe it would all make a little more sense. So, yep, 3 question limit. Anytime somebody does something creative, the last question is pretty much what's next. So, I kind of figured you would ask about what I plan to do going forward, but that was also the last question that I wanted to be asked, so I don't know why I set it up that way. Hopefully, to be honest, nothing. If it were up to me, this would be the last public thing that I do, you know. But I guess we'll see. So I figured if it helps anybody to see what modern day mental illness can look like, then that's a good thing, you know. And if it helps anybody see what modern day yo-yoing looked like, and that in turn helped them um deal with whatever they have in their mental, that would be a good thing. So I just kept putting them up and people kept watching, and that wasn't the plan, but really there wasn't much of a downside to releasing this as a series. But I never wanted it to be a, whatever. It was a meditation. It was a practice on the editing, and practice with this camera that I really liked conceptually, and it just kind of fell into place that it worked out kind of how I pictured it in my head, and so I put it up. But as far as what's next, that there was never supposed to be a next. Like if I had to make a prediction, it would probably be something like, one acting role in which I'm a clear and obvious Oscar candidate or frontrunner who is completely snubbed of both nomination and obviously winning. But it's like a clear favorite, like one role like that, first role, the only time anybody ever sees me act, and then I would just disappear. Maybe, acting commercials. That seems like an untapped, people in commercials, they're either famous somehow or not. But I don't think there's anybody that's really turned acting in commercials into what it could potentially be, like this is what I do, There are plenty of times when I don't know if the person in a commercial is, famous for something else or just an actor, whether they're a spokesperson or a commercial actor. And I think that somebody at some point is going to merge those two things and become a, spokesperson for commercials in general, if that makes sense. So I might go down that path, but hopefully, after this interview runs, people might look for more work out there and just never find it. And then, we'll see. I might put it all together between the YouTube series and this one interview into some sort of autobiographical document, something or other. But I really don't know yet. So hopefully this is it. Hopefully this is the only time that I'm ever in the public eye. Never know what's next.